This isn't usually my subject matter when I do a video, but I was getting into putting a good CB and a 10-meter radio in my truck, and what I found is that I was having problems getting the SWR where I wanted it because, for convenience sake, I chose the Fender hood mounting position on the vehicle. You've heard them say, if you look around and you're doing your research, they'll say, well, where you put the antenna makes a big difference. It actually does, but there's another thing I might point out. If you're having problems with your SWR and this is where your antenna's at, I'll give you a pointer. So when I first put the system together, I was using basically like a fire stick here. And, you know, ideally, let's start with the fact that the best antenna you can get is a 102-inch stainless whip, but it's ridiculously inconvenient. So what they've done is they've taken that antenna and they've shortened it by winding it on a fiberglass rod. It's loosely wound up to this point, and then it is as tight as the wrapping on the eyes of a fishing rod. Right here, all that length is right here, focused at the top. That's why they call it a top-loaded antenna. When I put this on the truck, my SWR was great, but my reception and my transmission quality was not that good because it's just not that particularly great of an antenna. So what I decided to do was upgrade my antenna. So the next thing I did was I bought a good high quality antenna. It's the Trucker, it's the Wilson 5000 Trucker, which is a center loaded stainless steel whip antenna. All this means is they took all that extra length of 102 inches and they focused it in the coil here in the center of the antenna. This is a great antenna. I put it on the truck, and while my reception and my transmission quality was better, my SWR was too high and I could not for the life of me figure out what the problem was. So as I started doing all my research, I got a pretty good hunch, and this is what I discovered. When you take a center loaded antenna and you mount it on this position on a vehicle, this winding, half of the signal being transmitted from this antenna is coming from the loaded portion here, but it's below the top of the cab. And so the signal's bouncing off the pillar, bouncing off the cab, back to the antenna, which is reflecting a bad SWR on my meter, and I couldn't figure out what it was. So I started looking around for other options, and I ended up going with a Hustler HQ27, which is in essence the same antenna, except the winding where they loaded it is 30 inches above the base of the antenna, so that if you notice, it's above the cab of the truck. My SWR, when I switched to this antenna, okay, so the quality of my reception and my transmission is the same as with the Wilson, but my SWR is a 135, which all the way across the board. So this is the difference. They say that position and location on the vehicle is important. Well, if you choose a Fender location for your antenna, make sure if you use a center loaded antenna, you don't have the loaded portion below the roof line. This antenna solved the SWR problem, and it's still a great antenna. For the life of me, I could not figure out why I couldn't get my SWR below about a 2. That was the problem. The Wilson's a great antenna if it's on top of the vehicle, or if it's on top of a mirror for a semi where it's above everything. But for a fender mount, you want a high center loaded portion. And like all the stainless steel whips, it still has the adjustable tip so you can adjust the overall length and dial in your SWR. But that's just a little pointer. If you're struggling with a high SWR and you can't figure it out, that could be the problem if you're using a center loaded antenna. So there's my tip for the CB guys, because I couldn't find anybody explaining this anywhere, and I just explained it. So have a great day. Good luck with your SWR reading.